I am really bummed on baking to a degree. So I have this Christmas fruit cake that I grew up eating that mostly nostalgia, but I love. But it takes 2 months to make it. So it's like, I don't want to do this anymore. It is such a pain to make. And the local ice cream place last year actually had a flavor that tastes exactly like this fruit cake. Like exactly. And I was like, well, this is perfect. I'm just going to start buying like a quart of this every year. And instead of spending 2 months baking this fruitcake, I'm just going to eat this come Christmas. And they didn't have the flavor this year, Sam. So that means in a few days, I have to start baking my stupid Christmas fruitcake.
How? Tell me, what about it takes 2 months?
You have to ferment it.
Oh, I
Yeah.
had no idea what was involved in making a fruitcake. You have to ferment it?
I have to ferment all the fruit, and that takes 2 months. And it's
Can you
not
not purchase
entirely
fermented
passive.
fruit?
Huh?
Can you not purchase fermented fruit? I've never attempted to.
I've never tried to bake with purchased fermented fruit. Also, like, I need a very specific mixture of fermented fruit.
Okay, what's in the mixture? Now I need to know everything about this 2 month fruit cake
Okay.
process.
Let me see if I have the recipe with me. Off the top of my head, I know there's pineapple, I know there's cherry, I know there's peach. Yeah, it's down in my recipe thing. I don't have it on me, but it's a lot and it's delicious, but it does take a lot of time.
Now you said it's not all passive. Like, what do you need to do? Do you have to like burp the fruit?
Yeah, stuff like that. You have to like check in on it, make sure it's not getting mold. You know what I mean? You have to
How
burp
many
it.
times have you done? How many times have you made this?
I've made this twice now, but it was a big thing when I was growing up.
One of your parents would make it, or
Yeah, I mean, I've been baking since I was like a little kid, so I always helped. But yeah, no, I haven't fully taken it over till like 2 years ago.
and it's worth the 2 months worth of effort. Like,
That's what I'm wondering, 'cause
it's just. I mean, like, I've never had fruit cake, and
most fruitcake
I'm.
is bad. And this might
That's what
just
I've
be
heard. That's the stereotype, right?
yeah, that's the stereotype, and this might just be nostalgia for me, you know? Like my wife ate it and was like, "Yeah, that's not bad. I don't need like as much as you made, but it's not
Yeah.
bad."
How much cake do you end up with?
I think I get 4 fruit cakes out of it, like, like pumpkin bread size, like pan. Like if you're
Sure.
making like a loaf pan, I get like 4 loaves out of it.
Okay. I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm
more
just
power to you if you actually do this.
I love the baking. I don't love this baking, and I thought I had a really cool ice cream loophole.
I'm so sorry for your loss.
I mean, it's 2021. I expect nothing better.
Sure. Should we wrap it up?
Well, we should
What do
probably
we
do
what,
adult time. We should talk about things
what
that
are we
we've
doing
done
for
that
adult time?
we've actually enjoyed with our free time. So,
What have you been doing?
all right. So I rewatched Insidious. One of my wife's best friends lives alone, and she wanted to do some Halloween horror movies, but she, lives alone. So she didn't want to watch them by herself. And so she came over and she'd never seen Insidious. She said, pick a good one. So I picked Insidious. It had been a while since I'd seen it. I just watched part four a few weeks ago and I was kind of like, part four ends right as Insidious 1 picks up and kind of like leads into it. So I was like, I want to get back into that. And Insidious still really holds up. It was like I knew what happened and it still got under my skin a little bit. So,
Is that the one with Ethan Hawke, or is that
no, that's
Sinister?
Sinister. Ethan Hawke,
Insidious is
ironically, or not ironically, but interestingly, did Sinister because he was offered Patrick Wilson's role in Insidious and turned it down, and then Insidious was like a mega hit and like spawned an entire like reignited a whole horror movement. And Ethan Hawke was like, "Crap, I missed out on that. I'm taking Sinister."
All right.
Yeah,
You should take it Insidious.
should have taken Insidious. I didn't like Sinister. I do like the Insidious franchise. So we got to watch that, and then after finding out last episode that there was a new Metroid game, I went out and bought it the day it came out. And it's Metroid Dread, and it actually is a little bit spooky and horror. It has a big element where you're being hunted slash like stalked, and you constantly have to like run and hide and sneak. So you do it does have that little dread horror spooky aspect to it. I can't play it right before bed because I do get too geared up because you are literally just being hunted. And I also finally picked up Maneater. It is basically Jaws the video game where you play Jaws. It's Grand Theft Auto, but you're a shark. And,
What a good description.
it is there actually was a licensed Jaws video game back in like the PlayStation 2 era that I really enjoyed. And this is definitely the spiritual successor to that. So excited to get that in because it's definitely horror adjacent if it's a Jaws type of game.
Nice.
So that's been my adult
Uh,
time.
yeah. I'm still playing Super Metroid, so maybe if I ever beat Super Metroid, I'll pick up Metroid Dread.
I mean, I can maybe just throw it to you when I'm done with it.
Oh, that'd be cool too.
I see you often
Um,
enough, I can just lend it to you.
oh, well, thank you. For my adult time, I recently checked out um movie that I've wanted to check out for a while, or a part of a series that I wanted to check out for a while, which are the Santo movies. So Santo is, or was, he was a Mexican wrestler, and he was really probably the biggest character in Mexican pop culture of the 20th century. We're talking about he's basically the Mexican Superman. He was a wrestler. His career started in the 30s. He was born in like the early 20th century, and he was active up through the 1980s. And between the early 1960s and the early 1980s, he made 54 movies. Like he had a really just a massive run, and he always played Santo, Mexican wrestler. And he was always caught up in these sort of crazy situations. The one that I watched was Santo versus Frankenstein's daughter, where he is going up against Frankenstein's daughter, who's after him for his blood because she wants to use Santo's blood to make a youth serum. Because her current youth serum is starting to lose its potency. But Santo, being such an amazing um, specimen of the human species, his blood is going to be the new component in her youth serum. And she sends after him her henchmen, which is a bunch of guys who are all elderly, like they're all over 100 years old, but they all have youth serum, so they're much younger. And two different monsters, including the original Frankenstein's monster and another monster of her own creation. This movie was so ludicrous, um, and ridiculous, and it was a bunch of fun. So I was happy that I finally started checking out the Santo movies. I only have 53 more to watch. This
Excellent.
one came out in like yeah, it came out in like the late 70s. This is like the 34th of these movies. He is definitely getting up there in years. Because you could tell like all the stunts were like, all right, you guys are gonna run at Santo. He's gonna hold his arm out and you're just gonna fall down. So that was a fun use of my adult time this week.
Okay. I mean, that's a worthy
Yeah.
use.
Yeah, now you gotta do something with your time, right?
That
All
reminds
right.
me, in college, we rented, or we found this really bad looking, like, 60s. It was in black and white, like, just like Santo-esque, like, D-list movie. And it was Rock and Roll Wrestling Women versus the Aztec Mummy.
Oh, I've heard of that.
It was so bad that they make fun of it in the movie.
Well, it's good that they knew what they were doing.
Yeah, like, is at the end when you finally get to the wrestling match between the rock and roll wrestling woman and the Aztec mummy. They're all like, it's all these people standing in line talking, and it's like, yeah, I hear the loser has to watch this movie again. And it was just like, it was a long one. It was like a 2.5 hour movie. It was one of my first dates with my wife, and I cannot believe we're married and have child.
Sometimes a bad first date leads to a good marriage.
Luckily, we were a few months into already being friends at that point. I think that's what saved us. It was a bad movie, but I definitely got vibes of what we had hoped it would have been off of your Santo story. We were
For
expecting
sure.
a Santo. We did not get one.
I ever told you about my first date with my wife?
Potentially?
The Scottish restaurant.
No.
So, my first date with my wife, we went to a Scottish restaurant. I feel like I've told you the story. This might have already ended up in a digression somewhere, so if it jogs your memory, let me know. Um, where we had, it was a Scottish restaurant across the street from my old apartment. And on the menu that night was bone marrow. And anytime I had ever seen bone marrow on television, the way they would serve it is with bread, and you'd get like a bone marrow knife, and you'd be able to get the marrow out and spread it on bread, and basically be like a very luscious, you know, bread and butter. Basically, what
Mm-hmm.
it would taste like. So I ordered that because I wanted to look cool. I was like, look at me, I'm worldly. I'm ordering
Bone marrow.
bone marrow. And then not knowing that my wife is like one of the pickiest eaters I've ever known, and she was not going to give two S's about me eating bone marrow. Came the bendy straw, and
Oh
I
no.
was like, what are we doing? I was like, what is this, waiter? It's like, oh yeah, you drink it through the straw. And saying this now, I feel like, oh, they were just messing with me.
I was about to say, are you sure they weren't just messing with you?
No, I was telling this came out. There was a Reddit thread where I posted this story, and as soon as I posted, I was like, "Oh man, this was just a waiter screwing with me." Um, I was like, "What?" At that point, I was like, "Well, this is an awkward first date, but you can't make it any more awkward, so I might as well drink the bone goo." And I did. And now my wife and I are happily married over a decade later.
Oh my God. As a Scottish person who loves Scottish food, I have never, ever, ever seen bone marrow presented like that.
No, they were screwing with me because they knew I was on a first date, and I am only realizing that telling the story recently. I was like,
Yeah.
no, there's no way. No, you serve it with a nobody would do that.
I've
This
eaten
was a
at
nice restaurant.
a lot of Scottish restaurants, and I've personally made a lot of Scottish food. I've been to the homeland and done a food tour, and never once was that a thing.
No, it's not a thing. Someone was screwing with me.
I am so
Again,
sorry.
happily married, happily married. But yeah, I was like, okay, cool. Not an enjoyable experience. It was really weird. I really wish I had just been like, no, give me bread and a knife so I can eat this like a normal human being.